Friends, there is a lot to share, and we've been talking about Lech Lecha all week long. This week has also contained some really, really big moments, especially for the Jewish world. And so I want to point to a few different current events in order to tap into them in the teaching of Torah. This week were the fifth Israeli elections in 4 years. And you can see by the kind of responses that the American Jewish world, institutional and private, have had that this is going to be a very complicated new reality in Israel. It shows that democracy works in Israel, and so that is something to be proud of. And hopefully the language that will come from the leadership of the State of Israel will reflect Jewish values, and when it doesn't, I think we're called to be in dialogue, sometimes very vocally. And I pray that we build something good together. It is important in that moment, in this moment, to mark that today is the 27th secular anniversary of the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, Zichrono Livracha. A blessing should be his memory. It is clear that the work that Rabin set himself to remains woefully unfinished and recently untended. Not just peace between Israelis and Palestinians, but the inner work that President Rivlin, when he was president, now President Herzog of Israel, fight for, which is the uniting of the tribes of the State of Israel, which includes religious Jews, secular Jews, Israeli Arabs, Druzim, Christian Israelis, Ethiopian Israelis, Russian Israelis. It is clear that in order to build a beloved community in the State of Israel, we have to have a vision that is not about vilifying. If a government minister vilifies gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual Israelis, Jewish values tell us to call that out as wrong and hateful, because one of the primary coalition partners has done so as part of their campaign. If a government minister demonizes asylum seekers in southern Tel Aviv from Sudan or Eritrea, as one of them has done, we must call them out. In order for the state of the Jews to be a Jewish state, we are called to fight for the values that animate Judaism. This is the battle between Herzl and Echad Ha'am, if you want to study two different early Zionist thinkers. And Yitzhak Rabin was an interesting example of a secular Israeli who demanded that Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, would still be part of the Bagrut, the Israeli SATs. And that means that we are called as Zionists to speak for Jewish values with love and passion and ferocity. As Zionists, not at Israel, but with Israel. We are the people, Israel. Yitzhak Rabin was a complicated human being, but he fought for peace. He died singing a song for peace. We dare not leave shlemut, shalom, peace and wholeness behind, as we do our best to exemplify the Jewish values that unite us as a community. We are a Torah community. We are a Zionist community. We will always be both. In order to be faithful to both, sometimes it means we have to lift up our voices, as Rabin did, at great personal cost, the ultimate cost. So in his memory, we learn Torah today. So too, this week, just yesterday, there was a warning from the FBI to the communities in New Jersey that there was a credible threat to synagogues in New Jersey. And you hear such a thing on the same day as the Brooklyn Nets suspend one of their star players, Kyrie Irving, who had spoken anti-Semitism and retweeted and publicized a terrible, lie-filled anti-Semitic film and refused to back down and apologize, doubling down on some of what he said and not taking responsibility for his actions. And so the Nets suspended him for at least 5 games until he commits himself to tshuva, to the act of repentance. So think about that in one day. The credible threat to synagogues in New Jersey, so much so that the FBI has to warn the Jewish community in New Jersey. and think about the response from the Jewish community and the responsibility that the government of the United States shows in kindred solidarity and in protection of our Jewish community. I didn't see, Natalie, what you're sharing, that there were also anti-Semitism concerns yesterday in Swampscott, Massachusetts. It is very important for us to understand that there is a rise in anti-Semitism and that we live in a country that acts to protect all of its citizens and we must lobby for that, but we must also not ignore the fact that it is there. We are not alone. Anti-Semitism is one manifestation of hatred, just like anti-black racism, just like anti-Asian violence, just like homophobia, just like Islamophobia, just like misogyny and xenophobia. These hatreds are interwoven. Intersectionality is a word that is used often as a cudgel against Israel and denying the vulnerability of Jews. But when used correctly, it tells us that hatreds of all kinds have one source: hate. And so when the ADL is involved in the nets trying to teach Kyrie Irving and the world what it is to take responsibility when hatred is spread, to stop it, to call it out, to combat it with love and understanding, we must recognize that that is a good moment. When the FBI stands for and with the Jewish community, we are called to recognize that that is a good thing. And UJA is present in this fight. It is one thing to feel scared, and that is legitimate and fair and right. It is another thing to stand united and to know not only does the Jewish community fight for its own, we are part of a fabric fighting against hate of all kinds, friends. And we dare not bury our heads in the sand. That's not what it is to fight for peace. That is what it is to be alive in the world, conscious and aware and ready to live more fiercely with my neighbors, for their sakes and for mine, for my children's sakes and for theirs. This Parsha is a moment where we hear of our ancestor Avram and our ancestor Sarai, who have grown in a nomadic household, called to journey forward and not to a determined place. If you look closely at the first verse of this week's Parsha, Vayomer Adonai el Avram, God said to Avram, Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeit avicha el ha'aretz asher ar'eka. Now, some of you know, this was my bar mitzvah Parsha. It was my son's bar mitzvah Parsha, my sister's, my father's, soon to be my stepson's. This Parsha is one that lives in my soul. And the verse of God's call needs to be paid attention to very closely. Go, Lech Lecha, go to your own self. Lech Lecha, go for your sake, deeply into yourself. Me'artzecha, from your land. Mimoladetecha, from the land that you were born in. Umibeit avicha, from your ancestors' home, from your father's house. Where am I going to have you go when you leave all that is familiar behind? El ha'aretz asher ar'eka, to the land that I will show you. God says, go to the land that I will show you. I'm not even telling you where it is. Just go. And I long ago compared this to Stephen Sondheim's play Into the Woods, where you have to depart the path in order to grow, in order to learn, in order to become. And so we need to be brave, friends, because the future is uncharted, unknown, but we know that we walk together. We know that what happens in Swampscott happens in Taipei, Taiwan, and what happens in Australia happens in Ohio. We know what happens in New York happens in Jerusalem. All of us are interwoven. We are a community that spans the world, and we look to our ancestor Avram and our ancestor Sarai, and we know that's where we came from. We come from somewhere. We are a hardy stock. We have heroes like Yitzhak Rabin who have stood for us, and we have allies like countries and companies, the FBI and the Nets. We have champions like the ADL, and we have communities like the UJA that supports each of us and all of us in that networked world. We are called, friends, to recognize that sometimes you have to depart the familiar, what feels simpler, in order to live, in order to grow. And the future, both in our homeland Israel and here in the United States, and since we are all over the world, here in Taiwan and here in Australia and here in France and here in Egypt and here in Israel, we have work to do, friends. We should be proud that just like Avram, we are a bottle of perfume. This is the midrash I shared on Monday. With a cork that just got lifted, we are ready to waft into the world and be a blessing. We are called to notice, as Avram did in the midrash I shared on Tuesday, that there's a birah doleket, a castle that is illuminated and also on fire. And we are called to tend to it and notice its beauty. That's our world. We are called to shatter all the idols, which is the midrash that I shared on Wednesday. We are called. Each of us has a unique gift, and united we have so much beauty to bring to the world. In the name of our community, in the name of our ancestors, in memory of Yitzhak Rabin, and with solidarity to our children and those to come, let's keep our work aflame in our hearts. There is beauty to notice and a world to rebuild. You and I are part of that great work, friends. Bless you. May you feel the gift of Shabbat this Shabbat. May you feel called to the journey we share with Avram and Sarai tomorrow morning in Shul. May you light candles and know that you are united with all other Jews in the world and all other neighbors and people in the world by tapping in to the creative spirit that gives us a break to rest for Shabbat and then calls us to action as soon as it's over. May we be blessed. Here we go. Dancing, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, friends. See you on Monday.